Hi, I'm Michelle Waters. I'm a registered clinical counselor in British Columbia, and I spend a lot of time talking about dissociation. So I thought I would make a video to share that with you. So, what is dissociation? Dissociation, essentially, very simply put, is checking out. It's being less present, less aware of our immediate experience of life and what's going on around us. And it's incredibly common. Everybody does it every day, probably every hour. Um, we especially do it, however, when we're overwhelmed. So, when we grow up in households that are overwhelming, when we simply don't get what we need and we're overwhelmed, maybe even by our own internal experiences, we have a tendency as human beings to dissociate. And dissociation can become a very habitual sort of a thing. Once the pattern gets started, it can be tricky to settle it down and to not dissociate as much. Dissociation is a little bit different from simply not paying attention. If you put me in a lecture about robotics, I will not be paying great attention. I will be thinking about lots of other things because I'm simply not very interested in robotics. My apologies if that's your thing. It's not my thing. And so I tend to not pay attention if that's going on. If I'm listening to the news and they're talking about something that I'm just not interested in, then I might just not be paying attention at that point. And that's different from dissociation. Dissociation is a checking out because the whole physical system is thinking that they're not safe at that moment. It's generally about safety and about feeling overwhelmed. That current experience of life is somehow intolerable, or maybe there's a trigger, there's something going on that part of the brain thinks and expects this is going to be hard to tolerate, so I'm going to check out before it even starts. So let's say you're in an educational setting. Some kids might not be paying attention because it's boring and they're just plain not interested. And some of the kids might be dissociating because they deem that school doesn't feel entirely safe. They're worried about failing, they're worried about not getting what's going on, they're thinking about other things that are at home, and they're living in a state of overwhelm, and that's dissociation. So dissociation can look like other things. People who dissociate a lot can end up with some other diagnoses that aren't quite the right fit for them, and I've got some ideas about that on my website, on the webpage, and there's some other information about symptoms, about what it looks like when we dissociate. Some people feel tingling sensations when they're really dissociating. Some people feel like life isn't real, or that they themselves aren't real. Some people just simply space out and don't really know what happened for the last hour or day. Might find things that they can't remember purchasing, or they might lose things all the time. They might have people telling them that they said things that they can't remember saying. Those are all common parts of dissociation. And dissociation looks different for different people. I've got a whole list of possible things. You might have other symptoms that are attached to your dissociation that aren't on the list. You may have just a couple of those and feel troubled about that. So I want to say dissociation is an entirely normal, healthy response, part of how everybody is designed to function when we get too overwhelmed. There's a wide range of how much everybody dissociates in any given day, in any given week. And you might find that you dissociate so much that it's making some things more difficult in your life. And if you're a parent, then definitely it's a very important thing that you are really fully present with your kids at some points. Kids very much need that from their parents. So if dissociation feels like it's a problem for you, then there's a few things that you might want to do about that. And the one thing you can definitely do right off the bat is to learn what it is to ground. And that's something you can Google, and there are apps that'll help you ground. Mindfulness meditation is sometimes one way that people ground. It's not always the best way for everybody to ground, but it's one option. And grounding is often about using your five senses and really intentionally developing an awareness of the present moment so that you're fully present right here, right now, exactly where you are. And a lot of people find that they don't want to ground. They're like, oh, this is boring, it's not helping, or they're just really resistant to it. It makes sense if dissociation is a very normal, habitual thing for you to do, that your system wouldn't want to be present. That makes sense. And so that's something that we should definitely work together on. Something you can find a good counselor to help you with. Ask a counselor, like, okay, I think I dissociate and I don't like grounding. Can you help me with that? There's a lot we can do in counseling to help work with dissociation so that it becomes more of a choice. Another tool that I use in counseling for that is lifespan integration, which is fabulous for helping people to feel more present and to feel more like the present is actually a place where you want to be. Dissociation is a skill, it's a tool, it's a form of protection that we're designed with. We are all designed with it. And in all the work that we do, it's never my goal to take that away. Dissociation is something that you will be able to do. You won't lose your ability to dissociate. But it's nice when it's a choice. An example of it being a choice is one person was talking to me when COVID first started about how anxious she would get when she went to the grocery store. How close is everybody standing to me? Is anyone going to be frustrated with me, angry at me because I'm standing too close, too far, like just way too much negotiation, like way too much stress to go to the grocery store. And this was someone with a lot of ability to dissociate. And I said, do you feel like you have enough control over dissociation so that you can stay just present enough to make sure that you get all the things that you need from the grocery store, but you're dissociated enough that you're really not even noticing the other people in the grocery store? So she tried it, and it became much easier to go to the grocery store. It's a tool, and it's a great tool, and it works really well for a lot of things. It can make it harder to connect with people if you're dissociating a lot. It can be harder to manage life. And it can be harder to really judge safety. Really can be harder to be able to choose other tools and other ways that we can keep ourselves safe as adults if dissociation is a really habitual thing. So that is some work that we can do together. That's some work that a lot of therapists out there know how to help with, about how to help you feel more control over dissociation. If you have any other questions, and certainly I have not answered a lot of questions here, this is just the beginning. If you have any more questions of me, you are absolutely welcome to click any of the scheduling buttons and schedule a free 15-minute consult to see if that answers a quick question and to see if you'd like to do some work together. So I look forward to doing that work with you. It's really exciting and really rewarding to be able to engage in life at a deeper level when you choose to do so.